Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. This week's video, I want to talk about something that for some reason in the car community is something that we make a very conscious effort to avoid learning, and that is insurance. I mean, it's something that we all need, it's something we have to have, but for some reason we want to know as little about it as possible. Typically, we just want to pick up a phone, call whoever it is our insurance provider, and be like, hey, I want full coverage. And they'll start asking you questions, and there'll be numbers, and all you really care about is getting the lowest premium possible and getting out on the road. Well, there's two reasons why I think we do this. Either one, it reminds us that we're spending money every month on something that's not fun, that takes away from money that we could be spending on things like intercoolers or blow-off valves or fuel management systems. Or the fact that we're buying insurance admits that there's a possibility that one day this car that we've dreamed about, we shopped for, we bought, we put time, blood, tears, and money into to build it just the way we like it, will one day get crashed and destroyed. Either way, this week what I want to do is I want to kind of break down insurance just for the everyday car guy. That way, next time you do call up and you need to either add a car or you're switching companies, when you start throwing these terms around at you, you're going to know what it is that they're saying, and you're going to know exactly what it is you want. That way you know that you're covered. Because one thing that a lot of car people don't realize is you may have an insurance policy, but it might not actually cover you or your car should the worst happen, and you may be paying out of pocket. Now, before I start talking about insurance, there are two things I want to bring up. One, if you do like automotive, particularly GTR content, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And two, if you feel like supporting the channel, I do have the JD Archer shop. If you go to jdarcher.bigcartel.com, you can see a limited selection of hats, t-shirts, and hoodies I've designed that are for sale. But with that out of the way, I'm going to walk you through very simply all these terms that come up when you're buying insurance. The first thing we're going to do is bring up three terms that anybody who's ever shopped around for insurance has probably heard, and that's liability, comp, and collision. And these really are the three main things you need to know. There's also uninsured motorist coverage, but I'm going to cover that at the end of the video. And it's something that, even though you may not be required to have, I heavily recommend that you do, and I'll discuss that later. I'm going to start off by talking about comp and collision. And the reason why is these really are just the easiest ones to talk about, because there's not a lot to them. It's pretty much when you get full coverage, you're typically adding comp and collision to the car. And they're slightly different, but they both do the same thing. They both pretty much cover the full value of the car. So with collision, pretty self-explanatory. If the car is involved in any type of collision, your insurance will cover the value of your car. Now, comp covers the car for anything that happens that's not driving related. So if you come out and your car has been stolen, comp will cover that. If you come out and your car has been vandalized, maybe by an angry ex, or maybe you're just grabbing some hate from some people who wish they had your car, comp will cover that. So if you have full coverage, you're typically grabbing comp and coverage on top of liability. Now that we got the two easy ones out of the way, we're going to start talking about liability. And this is where the majority of the information that you're going to need is going to be. Now, when you've bought in liability in the past, you probably just say, hey, give me whatever gets me the least premium. You know, how much can I save per month not putting into insurance? And typically they'll say, well, okay, do you want something like a 1535? And you'll be like, yeah, sure, whatever. And you may not know what those numbers stand for, so I'm going to run you through those right now. 1535 is the minimum in California. I don't know what it is in the other states, but it seems like that's a pretty standard number. Now, the first number, 15, that refers to how much your insurance will cover if you are at fault and somebody else is hurt. It'll cover up to $15,000 of their medical injury. So if you hit someone and they get like $8,000 worth of medical bills, your insurance will cover that, and it's pretty much all good. The second number in the 1535 is 30, which refers to total medical for a particular incident. So the first one really only covers one person if there's one person in the car. Now, if you hit a car that's got 3 or 4 people in it, that's when the second number kicks in. That's when it's going to cover $30,000. So if you hit, and there's like, let's just say there's 3 people in there, they both get, let's just say $5,000 worth of medical, that's $15,000. You pretty much cover that. Or let's make it even easier. Let's say they hit $8,000 worth of damage each between the 3 of them. That comes to $24,000, which is above your $15,000. So what happens? Your 30 kicks in, so your insurance can cover the medical for the multiple people that are in the car. Now the last number, 5, this is the one that's kind of scary. That is your property damage coverage. That means that if you hit a car and you do, let's say, $3,000 worth of damage, your insurance will cover it. But let's say you hit a car that's worth $80,000. Your insurance is only going to cover a max of $5,000 on that property damage. Now, this is where some of the other things are going to come into play. Now, typically, most people on the road have the minimum amount of required insurance, which is at $1,535. Now, this is scary for you because you're driving your dream car. You've got your Toyota Supra, you've got your GTR, you've got your RX-7, you've got your Camaro, you got whatever it is that you're driving, and it's definitely worth a lot more than $5,000. And somebody hits you. All of a sudden you're going, well, their insurance only covers $5,000. My car's worth $80,000. I just lost $75,000. I don't know about you, but that's definitely something I never want to go through. So that's why you carry the comp, the collision, because then your insurance will kick in and cover everything beyond that $5,000. So the person who hits you, their insurance is only going to cover $5,000. Your insurance is going to cover the other $75,000. Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds very, very unfair. I mean, you didn't ask to get hit. You didn't do anything wrong. You were sitting at a stoplight. Someone rear-ended you. Why are you on the hook for this $75,000? It's because there's people that are out there what are called judgment proof. And like I said, the majority of the drivers out there carry the minimum policy because they fall into this category of judgment proof. And what that means is they have no assets. So let's say you, for some odd reason, weren't carrying collision on your car. Someone hits you. It's their policy only carries $5,000. You're on the hook for $75,000. Yes, it's not fair. What do? You try to sue them. Well, what happens? They don't own a house. They only rent. They don't have any real assets. So even in the courts go, yeah, they owe you $75,000. There's no way you're going to get that. So that's why it's always a good idea to carry comp and collision on your car. I'm sure most of you knew this. You just weren't sure why. So now that you know how it works with your car, which most of us are thinking are the most important thing, I do want to throw in a little bit about medical because God forbid you get hurt. This is something you're going to have to deal with. And just like the car, what happens if you get hit? It's not your fault. That person's carrying that $1,535 and you end up with, say, $180,000 worth of medical bills. Well, their insurance is only covering $15,000 of that if you were the only person in the car. Who's responsible for the rest of the balance? And that is you. I know that's a very scary thought. It happens to a lot of people. And so what you're going to want to do, this is where it's going to come down to what I was talking about earlier with the uninsured motorist coverage, also known as underinsured motorist, because most people, because of requirements, do carry insurance. They just don't carry enough insurance. So if you don't want to be on the hook for that, you want to make sure that you pick up uninsured motorists, because if you get hurt, you do not want to be on the hook for that much money. Now, whoever your insurance provider is, make sure you call them, you talk to them, you figure out how the uninsured motorist policy works, because sometimes their max is based on your liability coverage. So sometimes it's only double. So let's say you're carrying a $1,535 yourself and you get the uninsured motorist. Well, that means they only double what your liability would be. So you're only covered for $30,000. So you can see where, once again, that's kind of scary. If you rang up $180,000 and they're only covering 15 and then yours is only covering 30, you're still on the hook for a lot of money. So this is why running around with the most minimum coverage isn't necessarily the best plan. So to build on top of that, you might be thinking, well, okay, what type of plan should I be? Should I be sitting at the 1535? Well, that's really going to depend on you, because that's the decision you're going to have to make. But here's some things to think about. If you're somebody who has no assets, you rent an apartment, you have a cool car, but really you don't have anything other than that, you fall into that judgment-proof demographic. So as long as you're okay with the fact that, if you get the uninsured motorist, you're only covered for yourself personally up to $30,000, it's probably what you're going to do, and that's probably why I said the majority of the people on the road have that. However, if you're somebody that owns a home or multiple homes or rental properties, this is not a good plan. You want to get a higher coverage. Maybe cover yourself up to, 100, 200, and 80. That way, if you do get into a wreck and you're at fault, it protects your houses, it protects your assets, it protects your other insurances, because that's what's going to happen. If you get into a wreck, you're at fault, and whoever you hit, their medicals go above and beyond what your insurance is on your car, they're going to start coming after your housing insurance or your house in general. So make sure that if you're somebody who has assets, you protect yourself and carry a better version of liability coverage. Now, up to this point, everything I've talked about is going to pretty much apply to the majority of the people on the road. However, there is one more thing I want to talk about, and this is for the people that, once again, they have either a lot of money or they have assets and things they want to protect. There's an additional type of insurance called an umbrella policy. And these are actually kind of cool. So what an umbrella policy is, some auto insurance, they only will max out. So say you have $1 million house and you're driving a Ferrari LaFerrari. And your insurance is going to be well, we're only going to cover, let's just say $200,000, because that's just where we as a company max out. What you do then is you go and you shop for what's called an umbrella policy. And what the umbrella policy is it adds to what your max liability coverage is. So let's say you want to be covered for up to $1 million, but your insurance company on your car only goes up to $200,000. Well, you can get an umbrella policy for that $800,000 difference. Now, you've got to remember, if you get an umbrella policy, it doesn't stack. So you don't have to be like, oh, I have $1 million umbrella policy, and I got $200,000 on the insurance policy, so I got $1.2 million. No. What it does is it kicks in after you reach that $200,000 with your insurance policy, and it'll cover you up to $1 million. So like I said, this really only applies to people who have a lot of assets they need to protect. For the everyday person, you're not going to need an umbrella policy. And there it is. Pretty much everything you need to know as a general car person when it comes to dealing with insurance. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go hit that thumbs up button to let me know. It does help the channel out a lot. If you'd like to see more automotive, particularly GTR content in the future, go and subscribe to my channel. You can now follow me on all forms of social media, which include Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. I'll leave links to all those in the description down below. If you have any questions or you feel there's anything I missed in this video, go ahead and post in the comment section down below. I will respond to you. I thank you all for watching, and until next time, forget everything else, focus on the finish line.